Okay, so we're going live and I'm going to start letting everyone in. All right. Good morning, everyone. Everybody's coming in. Hopefully, for those of you that are joining us, we're not getting visited by the abominable snowman today, like some of us are. We've already got a good half a foot down in April. Although I did read an article yesterday, something along the lines of this is similar to two storms that we've had in the past. One that was also in an April event in the month of April, and one that was in an October in I think 2011, and they did bring on significant snowfalls. So for those of you that are joining us, if you have as much snow as we do, then welcome to the club. All right. So good morning, everyone. We're going to get started as we have a great panel with us today and a lot of content that we would like to go over. So we'd like to welcome everyone to the Mass MEP webinar event. It is presented to you. It's called Massachusetts is Leading Manufacturing into the Future with the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative. And manufacturing in Massachusetts, this is the pipeline programs, skills, and Massbridge. The manufacturing pipeline is in crisis mode right now, and there are several initiatives to help bridge that skills gap for manufacturing. And so this webinar today is we're going to outline some opportunities for expanding the pipeline into the future of advanced manufacturing and much more, if I do say so myself, from the panelists. I'm Haley Steele. I'm the moderator for the webinar. But your host today is Mr. Bob LePage, and Bob is the Assistant Secretary, Career Education at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We also have with us our panelist, Julie Jha. She is the Executive Director, Initiative for Knowledge and Innovation in Manufacturing at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or what we like to say is MIT. And we also have with us Kristen Carlson. She is the president at Peerless Precision, Inc. She is coming to us from a remote location. We will keep that unnamed right now. And we also have with us Farhad Vazagoo, right, Farhad?
Right, you got it right.
All right, close. Yeah, he likes to have a tough name just to keep me on my toes, I think. He is the director with the Advanced Technology Programs and Workforce Development. So thank you all for joining us this morning. As you can see, we are in a webinar format, so your mics are muted, but you will be able to engage with our panelists and hosts today. And we do ask that you do that. We will have the Q&A option that will be open and live for everyone. It is down on your bottom panel. You should be able to see the two Q&A chat bubbles. You click on that, and please note that if you have a question, more than likely somebody else within the audience probably has a very similar question. So we do encourage you to use that option. If there's something specific that you would like to put towards one of the panelists, you can always go in and use that as a chat button, and that may be a little bit more private to you. We do have an hour set aside for the webinar and the content today, but for some reason, if we don't get to answer some questions, we will try to be cognizant of everybody's time, including you in the audience, our host, and our panelists. So if they won't mind running over a little bit in time, we could always do that. But if for some reason we don't get to your question, you all did register with your email address, so we'll make sure we answer those questions and send that back to you. We are also live on Facebook today, and the purpose of that is because we like to expand our audience. We also use that as our DVR option. For Mass MEP is what we like to call that. So if there was somebody that couldn't attend the webinar today you feel will benefit from this presentation, you can go to the Mass MEP Facebook page and you can click on our videos and you'll be able to watch the webinar again. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our host. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Haley. And I want to first thank our panel for their time today and their partnering. we'll work together as a panel today to go through a series of questions to learn about the great things that they're doing to prepare for the immediate needs for manufacturing in the Commonwealth and the strategies that they're deploying to make sure that we have the talented workforce of the future that's going to be required for the Commonwealth to be successful. I want to also champion that we've done a lot of work in the last few years that you'll hear some about, some which has not had the same level of visibility, but is really important foundational steps. And included in that is investing in technology and equipment in our schools, in our community colleges, and some of our universities, and making sure that we are providing wide and deep access to opportunity for learners and for adults, and making sure that they have the equipment and technology required to prepare individuals for the career trajectories that are needed. So I'm going to start with the first question, and this one we're going to start with Kristen. And there are a number of manufacturing workforce challenges or problems that have been identified over the last few years. What are 3 or 4 that are rising to the top? And we'll again start with Kristen, and then the other panel members, feel free to add.
Sure, thanks so much, Bob. So, the biggest challenge is just the gap that we have in finding new entry-level workers to come into manufacturing. It takes a lot of work from employers like myself to get out and share the good word that advanced manufacturing is in Massachusetts in general, trying to attract more youth to go to the trade schools or go to the technical schools and seek out training afterwards, but even more so just bringing people in with the right aptitude to train up and turn into manufacturers for our companies, because of a view that has surrounded manufacturing for a very long time. There's a big gap in between 40 and 50-year-old machinists and 60-year-olds who are getting ready, close to retirement. There's not a lot of 30-year-olds in there, so then or 20-year-olds, so we're going down to the teenagers again. So it's really changing that view, educating everybody, parents, students, teachers, guidance counselors on the viability that a career in manufacturing offers and the options, the growth opportunities that come along with it. We do have we're kind of offset in the amount of students that are graduating every year that are able to fill the open positions. So in the Pioneer Valley in Western Mass, where I'm located, we did a study for 2018 to 2021, and our participants pretty much stated that we would have 1,500 job openings over those 3 years, whether they're replacing retired folks or adding new positions, with about 500 students graduating in the whole region for that same 3 periods. So there's a 1,000 person deficit there. We have the jobs, it's just finding the people who want to go into it, and then being able to train them on the job and through the training programs that we have access to become, so they can become the machinists or manufacturers and employees that we need them to be. So I think I hit at least three there, right?
At least 3. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for ideas. How about if we jump over to Julie for any follow-up observations?
Sure, I think what Kristen said is exactly right. One of the issues is just there's not enough awareness. So I had I worked with NPR in a story about a student who graduated from Springfield Technical Community College, then went on to internship at Lincoln Laboratory, and spoke about this trajectory, how he had not had a clear direction and then ended up in a career he really loved. And the response to this webinar or to this segment was just overwhelming. I got scores of calls from across the United States asking me how they could become photonics technicians. And so they were ready to fly, to move to Massachusetts to get this training because it is something that they had never heard about. So I think that's a story that needs to be told. Like Kristen said, there's also just a gap in terms of how many people were able to train and all the jobs that need to be filled. And one of the issues is that the training needs to be hands-on. So for a community college to have enough commitment to enough equipment to train hundreds of students or thousands of students, it's not realistic. So one of the things that we're thinking about is using new online tools to increase the number of people that have access to good training. Online will never completely replace hands-on training, but it's a start. And it would allow more people to learn about the opportunities and also to begin trying on some tools in an online environment. Another issue, I think, is wages. So some manufacturers are just not starting their employees at wages that are tempting. And I think I keep hearing that the wages go up quickly, and as soon as someone is well trained, they have a very good career trajectory. But until wages go up for those starting employees, it's a little bit hard for someone to see a career at, $15 an hour or $16 an hour. So that's something else that I've been hearing.
And Farhad, we want to add any observations?
Well, I think Kristen and Julie just summed up all the ones that I really wanted to talk about. But I think in general, what I would say is, which goes back to the point of that what Julie made, is the awareness about what opportunities exist. I think this is time and time again, I come across companies and people who just don't know about programs that we are offering, the opportunities that exist within manufacturing. Just this, I think this, you may think this is a cliche, but this image that people have about manufacturing, it's the sort of what I call, and it's not just my sort of assessment. I heard this from Mike Tomasi at one point, and he said, people see it as the 3 Ds, dark, dirty, and dangerous. They still have this image of that these manufacturing places are, dangerous places to be, is not the kind of job you want, and so on. And they're not aware that most of these jobs now going towards automation. We're seeing a lot of robotics. These are all the things that entry, or I would say students, would care about, because they can relate to those things. They can say, I know about robotics. I'm in the robotics club. I'm doing the program, and so being able to connect with students. And I think Kristen mentioned before as well, it's not just students, as well as students, we need to connect with parents and guidance counselors, because ultimately those folks are the folks who are going to be guiding students to the kind of jobs that exist there. But it's interesting to see that we have problems that not enough entry levels, and as well as not enough sort of supervisory and middle technician level to that. And the problem is really, if it goes back to the issue of a lot of people are retiring and not enough people coming into the system. And anything that we can do in order to increase the input to the system would help us. And I think some of those things that Kristen and Julie have talked about, and what I've said, is really goes a long way to establish that.
Excellent, and that's a perfect transition to our next aligned topic. And we're going to start with Julie on this one. And I think it builds off of those challenges, and to talk a little bit about the programmatic offerings that are out there and are new. So there are a myriad of programs that are being offered. I would note at both high school level and adults. And at the same time, employers note there is not enough trained people showing up for the hire. So what is the problem? What are some of those core issues that we need to focus on to resolve to be able to build that capacity of talent? And so let's start with Julie, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll go through the panel.
So I'll jump off with what Farhad just said. Is one of the issues is just even outstanding programs like Springfield Technical Community College's photonics program. Nick Massa, who runs that program, is going from high school to high school and still having a tough time recruiting students. So we do have good programs, but then, he has 100% almost placement rate, but can't get enough students. There's another issue that I've heard about, which is manufacturers don't look to the training programs that we have in the state. So they don't necessarily look to the vocational schools or to the community colleges as a source of students. many of them perceive the burden of training employees as their own solitary burden. And so I think that's something that we can address. That's something that Mass Tech is addressing through the Massbridge program, is creating new curriculum to begin just making sure that the programs that we have are the programs that manufacturers find valuable, and so that they have a ready source of employees. More narrowly on that, one of the things we've been hearing is when companies hire right out of community college, they hire at an entry level. And then there's a jump to hiring someone with a bachelor's degree. And there may be this level in between, which is called, we call it a technologist. And so we've actually put in a proposal to create a tier of worker that can work with technicians, can do the technician jobs, but also can communicate well with engineers. And so they've been called cell leaders, they've been called other things, but someone who can bridge that gap. So there's no gap in the workforce anymore. And this is curriculum that we're hoping to build that would be free, online, roughly a year long, a hub and spoke model where in the hub you learn about processes, systems, supply, and people. And in the spokes you would learn about individual technologies, and different schools could interchange those spokes to make sure it's relevant to what they do. And we would offer this to community colleges. We would offer it to companies. And it would have AR and VR components so that there would be some online training. So this is one thing that we're pursuing, and we hope to roll out. And that would be a bridge, that would be a layer over what the state is already doing and we're involved with, which is the Massbridge program. So these are some of the ways we're beginning to think about addressing these gaps.
And how about Farhad, do you have any that you would like to add? Observations about the mismatch between programs and demand?
Sure, Bob. I think again, Julie just went over some of the programs that are in the works or available right now. I think it's actually an interesting problem where we're saying we have lots of programs that are going, and at the same time, employers telling us not the right programs or it's not effective, whatever is going on. But I see it really. When I look at this problem, I see two things. One is that that the kind of expertise or the capabilities that we are teaching may not be aligned with what the manufacturers are looking for. And I don't know what that problem is, whether, is what I call it, I'm an engineer, I call it impedance mismatch. I'm hearing something, but I'm not delivering what it needs to be. So I categorize this as twofold. One is basically the kind of skills that are required to make someone employable, if you will. So those are the characteristics we look at. I mean, at the very bottom, it's going to be something about, okay, we need to be on time and show up at work and be diligent, and put your cell phone away. It's not something that you want to have while you're operating a machinery. You don't want to have that. Those are sort of some of the basic stuff. But then layered on top of that, we're looking for people who can learn, who can. It's not something that they're focusing on one particular job. They need to be able to systematically think, to be able to problem solve, being able to communicate. Those are some of the attributes that the manufacturers, and Kristen will have a lot to say about that, are looking for. Then they can layer on or layer in the expertise that they're required to do a particular job. Those kind of, I usually look at the fact that the state and the institutions need to deliver the training, what I call the basic training, that makes somebody employable, some of the characteristics I talked about. And then we want employers really focused on training that's particular to the company. We will not be able, given that we have 7,000 or 8,000 or 7,000 SMEs, no institution can can provide training for the specific jobs. It is not really the place we want to be. That is in the domain of manufacturing. So yeah, I am in this particular product technology, whatever it is, and we're going to do this specific training on XYZ machine. So that's something that can be done. But if we can get our workers, what I call the basic training or the fundamental training, deliver those, then the employers can build on top of that. That's what I see. I think some of the stuff may be missing from the current set of programs and initiatives that are out there that are trying to address this problem. And Julie talked about that. We are thinking about programs, and indeed we will be talking a little bit more about this, about programs that we have in the works that are going to address that.
And Kristen, how about some observations from an employer perspective who's out there trying to find talent and living the mismatch of program availability and access?
I call that living the dream, Bob. Both Farhad and Julie touched on a lot of things that I deal with on a regular basis. So, I'll touch on the awareness factor, and then also the awareness factor for manufacturers going to the training programs to get them. You've got companies like myself who embrace entry level, because once you bring them in and you start training them, you treat them right and you show them that path, you've got them for life. A lot of people, when they're in that position where they've been trying to find an experienced manufacturing person to come in to replace someone who retired, or they're getting busier, they need that right away. They can't afford 3 years of training to get someone coming out of a college or vocational school to get off the ground running. If you plan ahead, it's different, but you either hire someone or you don't at that point. We're focusing a lot on students and kids, but there's also the adults who can go to training programs for if they're unemployed or underemployed to get a better career path, which we've hired through a lot as well. The fact that we have to talk about soft skills as part of training programs now is kind of mind-boggling to me, but I see that every time we bring in a co-op student. And I don't think any of us can emphasize enough how important that is, because you can bring these kids into your facility and they don't get it. They don't realize that having to if you show up on time ready to work, you get to keep your job. But if you don't come in and, if you never come in time. So I think training programs focusing on work readiness, employability skills, soft skills will be just so valuable to the employers in the state. And then Farhad was right. There's no such thing as one size fits all in training for manufacturing, because we all have our own processes. We all do everything different. What we look for coming out of training programs, whether it's machining or going into photonics or something else, is the base level, like the base knowledge to be able to, the foundationals to be able to build from. So when they go to their employers, they've got that, they can read a blueprint, they know technical math, or they know their way around a CNC machine or whatever it is. And then it's our responsibility to train them to what we need them to be. And, there's the apprenticeship program we can do on the job training hours. We've got a great training fund within the state that you can actually build your own training program every couple of years, have, hire an internal trainer and then do that in there. So you have your own pipeline. It's a matter of manufacturers being willing to put in the effort, look for the people with the right aptitude mechanically, the right attitude to want to grow and learn. Ultimately, if they've got that right attitude and that right aptitude, you can turn someone off the street into a manufacturer as long as they're open to it. But it's our job.
Yeah, I like to say it's both of our jobs.
It's both of our jobs because we work together so well.
Yeah, no, and I would just add, as we move to the next question, just a little bit of an observation is I think you talked about a lot of good programs that are out there and happening, whether that's co-op students or internships and things like apprenticeships. And I think it is upon all of us to make sure that as many employers are as informed as you are. And that's something when we talked about challenges that came up about awareness, but I think there is an opportunity for better awareness for employers, because whether it's the expansion of high school programs and manufacturing innovation pathways. I know you know about like Agawam out in your area.
Can I
Yeah.
follow up?
Sure.
Some of this that Kristen just talked about. And I'm going to put her on the spot a little bit.
Do it.
So I think you mentioned, Kristen, you mentioned something that resonates well with me, is really the time investment that manufacturers put in there. I feel that there's reluctance in putting the time investment, and I know the reason. I know some of the reasoning behind it is that if I invest so much time in sort of teaching the skills, then basically somebody's going to come and poach from me, that person, and then I'll have to start all over again. I think that's a chronic problem we see, that poaching, or this attitude that I can't devote the time to invest in the training, but I can offer a little bit higher salary and get this person from company A to B or whatever it is, and that really, I think, in my view, at least what I've seen, it hurts the whole system. I think in my view, it would behooves us to look at this and make sure that we are investing in the fundamentals, and everybody would be happy. I don't know. That's just one observation I have. Kristen, I know you're probably going to disagree with that, but I'm going to give you.
No, and I only have 3 to 5 minutes to talk about this.
Take the 5. Take the 5.
So yes, poaching is a real problem. I just had that happen within the past month. Actually, they didn't do it intentionally. When they found out the employee was working for me, they called me immediately, and I said, "Yeah, I found out. I appreciate you letting me know. I already asked if there was anything to do. We could do, and there wasn't." And they ended up staying at that other company for 8 days before they left to go to another one for more money. So there are just people out there like that. He was an older gentleman that we had hired last year for our quality department. So sometimes I call that being in the industry for too long, and they're a little bit tainted on that front, because not in a bad way, but 10, 15, 20 years ago, that was the norm. Machinists, manufacturer would bounce around from one shop to another for an extra 10 cents, quarter an hour. We are very lucky at Peerless because we have always been a training company. Our turnover is very low. If someone doesn't stay there, it's for a very good reason, and they don't belong with us. We're always better off without them. But I mean, right now we've got 29 people. I'd say there are 20 of them who are in production or inspection. 15 of those we hired through co-op programs at Westfield Tech, internships from STIC, or also the adult training programs that Mass Hire puts on. They are all still with us, and some of them are over 20 years at this point. So when that happens, and that is a risk, it's just a risk that we have to take. If you don't train the employee, you're not going to be any better off than if you trained them and they left you. It's, you're either training a new employee and hopefully keeping them, or not doing it at all. And then you're still at square one where you have no incoming people to join you. So nowadays, especially the younger generation, or I don't know what the generation names are now after millennials, but they're looking to be happy where they work, for some kind of fulfillment. They want to know what they're doing is making some kind of a difference. They want to be treated like a team member and not just a number. So as business owners or employers, if we remember that and try to really encourage that and feed that growth within them, they'll stay. And ultimately, if they think that you're not paying them enough and they want to go see if the grass is greener on the other side for an extra $1 or $2 an hour, small shops, small companies cannot compete with the larger players. We don't have the funds to do that. We're held tight to keep pricing at a certain level for our customers. So if they're leaving just for that extra $1 an hour, ultimately people will disagree with me on this, but you're better out without them. And you will end up finding someone who values the time and effort you put in to training them to be a member of your team, not an employee, but a member of the team. It's all about phrasing it and doing whatever you can to make them feel welcomed and part of the family, as it were, So it's it's like when a company loses a customer to a competitor, whose fault is it really? you might have not been treating that customer properly. If I'm losing an employee to another machine shop, I have to look and see what we could have done better to keep them. It's not my colleague or my competitor's fault. It's not the employee's fault. They're doing what they think is right for them. What could we have done better to make it so they would have stayed here?
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Thank you.
How about if we jump to the next one, and it's very aligned, and I'll start with Fahad, perfect timing. What are some of the new strategies for high school programs or adult training programs like Massbridge to build a talent pipeline that you would like to highlight? And then we'll start with Fahad and we'll go through, and then we'll take some Q&A.
Sure. So Bob, I think we've been talking about programs and it's one of the new programs and one of the new initiatives, Massbridge. So currently we have a couple of programs at the state level that focus on different target population. One is the mass manufacturing training program that we have that's managed through the mass hire boards and run through by them. That focuses on unemployed and underemployed workers. So these folks are coming through and they're associated with machining, welding, and so on and so forth. And then there's the initiative that we have, which is connected with our Massachusetts Manufacturing Innovation Initiative, M2I2 program, which focuses on capital program as well as training and education needed to run on those technologies. And these are aligned with Manufacturing USA initiatives. So these Manufacturing USA initiatives or institute, I should say, are targeting basically across the whole United States. We have 15 of these institutes, and each one of those institutes are targeting particular industry. And their job is to identify what kind of jobs or what kind of technologies will be needed in the future. And we're calling them advanced manufacturing that are aligned with those technologies and the population or the capability that we need to have. So the new program that we've been sort of rattling up as the conversation's been happening is called Massbridge. And really the name gives out the sort of the secret behind it is that we've got the system that is developing what I call the focusing on traditional manufacturing jobs, which is the welding and machining and so on and so forth. But what we see that the population or the industry is moving towards automation. There are going to be jobs required that working with robots and so on and so forth. And so those kind of technologies or jobs are aligned with the Manufacturing Institute. There we call them highly specialized sort of. And what we want to do is develop a pathway for folks that are in these, in the manufacturing training program to find their way to those jobs. And that allows them to upskill and as well as seek better economic prosperity, to be honest, as higher paying jobs and more forward-looking jobs, if you will. The program Massbridge, this is a program that was it's in collaboration with the Department of Defense. This is a grant that the state got last year. It's a $3.2 million program over 2 years. And what we are trying to do is develop curriculums and the awareness associated with these jobs that exist. We're working with the Massachusetts, with the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. We're working with your office, Bob, Executive Office of Education. Bob is actually a outstanding member of the team that helps us a lot. And we're working with the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. We're working with Mass Hires. We're working with Mass MEP. We're working with MIT and other and lots of community colleges and schools to develop a curriculum that addresses some of these gaps and the needs that we've been talking about. So one of the things that we've been doing is identifying, okay, we talked about awareness. One of the things that we're trying to do is really develop a awareness module. This is a non-credit, but it is a module that allows people to understand what kind of jobs and what kind of possibilities exist with these disciplines, if you will. And it's a way for us to connect, not just with adult who want to upskill, but also with students who want to get into manufacturing. We talked about a little bit about earlier on, some of the folks who are in the path are the guidance councils, the parents, and the students themselves. This is the sort of the new blood you want to get into the system. And what we want to do is developing curriculum modules that talk about, what are these jobs about? When we talk about robotics or automation, this is the same thing as drones. And if you, flying the drone around, you will immediately sort of connect with that, jobs that are associated with automations that you never think about it, but that you now see it as that. So we're focusing on understanding what is out there and what we need to develop in order to plug the gap. Some of the key points of the programs are really trying, as I said, creating the pathways, on-ramping and off-ramping. We see a lot of people is that we need to give them a roadmap that you can get on this roadmap and get off this roadmap at any point in time. It doesn't mean that you have to stay and forever on that thing, but it's really up to you. And then providing those bridges or pathways to these advanced jobs, and really coming up with curriculum and training that can be short enough but effective enough that give people the sense that, look, if I do this, I can get on to this job. And also giving employers the opportunity to say that these are not 15 months training. These are 5 to 7 weeks training to focus on a specific training required to address the job, whether that is problem solving, critical thinking, whatever that is. So those are some of the attributes we're looking. We're hoping that to launch this program in the fall, and on a limited scale, and then we will go on a full scale starting next year once we've had the sort of understanding how well the initial program is working and getting the lessons learned from that.
Great. Julie, how about a follow-up? I know you've been involved in Massbridge and also some of very specific programs that you've launched in the last couple of years to target this challenge.
Yeah, so on the Massbridge, we're involved in the awareness module for high school students. We are involved in the curriculum committee. We've been involved in the benchmarking, so understanding all the best practices across the country and trying to incorporate those into whatever Massachusetts does. And we've also been involved in the roadmap effort, which is really working closely with companies. So interviewing companies, understanding the skills they need to make sure that the curriculum that Massachusetts develops directly meets those skills. Outside of Massbridge, but also connected, we have a number of initiatives. So one of the things that I'm working on is a big technician training program. This one is 15 months, but with Stonehill College in Bridgewater State. So we will actually, the first cohort of students is finishing up now, getting their internships, and we will be creating downloadable teaching packs. So any community college that wants to kick off of what we've worked on there can do that. We also have a robotics technician training program in Pennsylvania. Another thing we've done is we're in the process of setting up an open Edx platform. And this is funded by the Department of the Defense. And this means that many different groups can add content to this online platform. It gives them a place to put their content. So if they want to create online content, they can, and they can reach students. So this is Massbridge will be putting the awareness module on this, and we are working with many of the institutes on this. We also have very high level courses. So we have PhD level courses that we're offering. We're offering middle worker courses. We also are trying to reach high school students. So this is something that helps develop the pipeline. So this is, again, in coordination with Mass Tech, but also some initiatives we've done on our own. So we worked with TED Ed to create these animated instructional videos that are very engaging. We've created 3 of those, and we have millions of viewers on those animations, and they are being incorporated into the Massbridge awareness module. Another thing that we're looking into is just understanding the way students get excited about things. So one of the things we've been hearing, especially from community colleges, is that math and manufacturing, math can be a real impediment. And so is there a way that we can influence how students perceive math? And so one of the things that we're going to do is try to work with MIT's Education Arcade. So this is game-based learning. And rather than just, slap students with a bunch of formulas that look very intimidating and not at all fun, we're going to tie them to different areas like robotics or flexible electronics. So they learn math through applications in a game-like environment. They actually get winning scores and they can compete against their friends. And so we are trying to be innovative in how we can encourage students to pursue these opportunities. Something similar we're working on with the Education Arcade is called a MITE ARG. So this is Massachusetts Integrated Photonic Engagement Alternate Reality Game. And this is really a pathways game. So you have different challenges and you use simulations and you try to, once you get through a challenge, you can go to the next challenge. So we're working with a number of area high schools to walk students through these challenges. And so that kickoff meeting is actually today, where we're beginning to set up that game. So these are different approaches that we have. I know that we're also interested, as I said before, in AR and VR and introducing students in an online environment, and even working our AR VR with the Education Arcade. So it's AR VR in a game-like environment. So we're really trying to make learning fun and accessible and exciting.
Kristen, I know you've been involved in a lot of new initiatives and a lot of partnering around your region and across the state. Are there any that you'd like to highlight before we move to some Q&A?
Sure. So I'm involved with a lot right now. So, around the region, I am part of the Regional Blueprint Planning Committee for all the pathways. So I've been working with Mass Hire and a lot of schools and everything over the past few years so that we have those visual roadmaps for students and schools to pass out and say, if you get to this level, this is where you get the training, you'll make this much money per year, and then all the steps to go to that. So they actually have that visual roadmap to show them entry level through advanced, advanced positions, and if they want to go to school or not. Recently, this past year, I'm now the chair of the Workforce Training Funds Advisory Board. So, putting a little bit more input or working on their, awareness factors for that grant fund, and also how we can push it more on manufacturers in our region to try and do what I had mentioned earlier about developing our own internal training programs with our own internal providers, if that's what we need to do, so that we can still have that incoming, those incoming workers. I've also started doing some things on a national level. So I just got named the chair of the National Tooling and Machining Association's Advanced Manufacturing Practices and Education Development Board. So I was vice chair for 3 months, and they said, "You want to do chair?" And I said, "Okay." So we actually have this virtual world that we've been using with the NTMA for the past year to do conferences on. And they're not Zoom conferences. It's like playing a video game. So we have little avatars. We get to go in, explore the world. And in May, we're having our first annual AMPed Virtual Career Summit. So these invitations are going out to schools throughout the country to bring teachers, guidance counselors, parents, and their students in, where the students get to come in and pretty much play a video game to learn about manufacturing and what it has to offer. So, one of the things that's, how do we really reach them? How do we get them excited? What's better than video games and kids? I mean, Julie was talking about AR and VR. That is what they want. They don't want to deal with people on the real world level. They want to do it virtually like that. So let's bring it to them and make it. I'm excited to see how that's going to go. I work with a lot of the traditional schools that are seeking innovation pathways. So in my region, West Springfield High School, they did an engineering pathway a few years ago. I've been on their steering committee for that. I was the first employer to that Agawam High School called to bring manufacturing in, and they've got a manufacturing innovation program now. So pretty much anyone who asks me to help them with something along the lines of workforce development, how do we bring the trades back into our school? I always say yes. Because the fact that they're reaching out to ask me or another employer means that they're serious. They know that there's a need for it and they want to fulfill that need. And we need to get our industry trades in general back into all the schools as much as we can so that we've got that increased pipeline. Because right now they don't, most of them don't touch it. So if schools want to take a field trip, or right now virtual field trips, it's not the same as being able to touch the parts and hold them, but come on in. I've been doing quite a few where I'm doing a virtual field trip with middle school students that are in the Right Flight program. So they get to go fly planes or simulations out of Barnes Airport. So we do a virtual field trip at my shop. And then I get to show them all the parts that we make for airplanes and helicopters. And one of the ones they get to fly might have something like that in there. And then they get to go see the planes where parts that we make in Massachusetts are going into. So they're making that connection. And all of a sudden, oh my God, I didn't know that that's what we did here. I want to look into this. I say, who wants to work at my shop? And I get, half the students raising their hands. So, then we just keep in touch and follow up. But it's if someone asks you to do something like that, say yes. It's, I do too much, but then again, I don't do enough. So.
Well, your work is certainly appreciated and making a difference, not just here in Massachusetts, but now nationally. And so being conscious of time, I'm going to just give a little bit of information for people on innovation pathways. Innovation pathways are new. 3 years ago, we started them in the Commonwealth. And the goal is for students in traditional high schools to get exposed to key industry sectors. And certainly manufacturing is a priority for the Commonwealth. We now have 26 high schools who are providing technical courses, as Kristen mentioned, work-based learning experiences, job shadowing opportunities, mentoring, internships, or capstone courses. And the goal is to continue to build that footprint because we need a wider capacity and we need to expose students. So just in case people weren't familiar with that. I think I see 2 questions in the chat. So let's start with them. We'll do them in order. For all, what is the competitive advantage Massachusetts has in manufacturing? And how is this program building a future to keep that competitive advantage? I reworded it a little bit, but how about Massachusetts' competitive advantage and how's Massbridge and other things allowing us to have that competitive advantage for the future? And let's start with Farhad.
So I think this is a great question, by the way. This is, from my point of view, I think all the jobs that we've been talking about, the technology, they're laden with technologies. And I can't think of a better state. I might be a little bit, Massachusetts centric, but I can't think of another state having this many community colleges, educational establishments that are so far embedded in technologies. Innovation is the key part of this, right? As we look towards the next generation of I call the rebirth of manufacturing, which is what we're seeing right now. I feel that the technology plays a key role, and we are in the middle of it. We are immersed in technology with all the educational establishment around us, innovation. And some of the programs that, quite honestly, I talked about earlier on, Massachusetts M2I2 program promotes those things. We need innovation because innovation is an integral part of manufacturing. If we don't understand the innovation that goes into manufacturing, we lose out the edge on the next generation of product. I think it's very, very key for us to be cognizant, and I think that's our competitive advantage over the other states.
And Julie, what would you like to add in that observations about competitive advantages currently and for the future?
So far, you pointed to the universities. I'm going to point back to you. I think the Massachusetts state government has been so wonderful a partner. There are so many resources. Bob and Farhad are wonderful resources. There's a skills cabinet that is very well coordinated. I've worked with other state governments. I've watched other institutes try to work with state governments, and it is not at all the same thing. So I think I would say Massachusetts' eagerness to invest and to help its manufacturers is a key reason that we can be successful.
Kristen, observations from your point of view as an employer?
Farhad and Julie hit both of them right on the money. I mean, although we spoke a lot about employee gaps and skills gaps today, we have the training programs that we put on our technical high schools and community colleges. They are not duplicated throughout the rest of this country. So we're getting a caliber of employee out of schools, and then the training that we provide puts them at a lot higher level than a lot of other states do. And that's, one of the main reasons that when companies of mine are asked to, hey, move down to Tennessee, save some taxes or whatnot, I say no, because I won't find anyone who can actually make what I need. And I don't want to move down to Tennessee anyway. The state is a great partner. It's, Farhad mentioned the M2I2 fund earlier today. And I got a brand new laser welder, which added a capability, vertically integrating us through the M2I2 grant program. It's not a lot of people want to go and seek out that things, but the support that we get from the state agencies, the schools that we have, the training programs, it's not duplicated. And the rich history we have in our state with being a manufacturing state, we're also, if you're in it, you're so proud of it. And sometimes that makes all the difference in the world.
And I'm going to add to it and jump to the next question. But when people ask around the country, because again, I think a lot of people appreciate the work, I say it's a commitment to collaboration. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the secret sauce that really, you can't get there if people aren't collaborating. And it's the long history of success and the continued commitment to it that I think makes the difference. We have a question from, I think it's Josh. I have my cheaters on today. What is the role of formal apprentice programs? And then adding to that, and should they be run by employers alone, or is there room for state and or community colleges to partner, or for teams of companies to run together? And I've been involved in that space and some of the work that's going on in that space, but let me throw it out to the panel. We have about another 5 to 8 minutes. So any thoughts about apprenticeships, and then I can kind of add in some stuff at the state level.
I'll take a crack at it, Bob. I think it's a complementary program. I don't think it's one or the other. I think that there's a role that employers play in this, and there's a role that the state can play. I think with the Massbridge program, we're addressing some of those issues, some of those challenges. But I think apprenticeship is a good program, because what we want to have is an employer at the other end. It says, if you go through this course or training, we will have you. We will have you this job and with this benefits and so on and so forth. So having a apprenticeship is being in what I call immersed in the environment. You're going to get a feeling what it's like to be part of a system, part of a manufacturing. We talk about awareness module. Well, nothing can be more awareness module than actually being on the job and seeing how things work and connecting with the product, especially connecting with products that get designed because of the jobs that those folks are doing.
Any other observations? And I can kind of give a couple of updates on apprenticeship, because there has been quite a bit of work done in that area, but I think it's just, we've been planting the seeds that are starting to bloom. But I didn't know if anybody else had any observations, Kristen, or.
I'll just say a couple of things, which is that there's a registered apprenticeship, but then there's many gradations of apprenticeship with a small a and internships. And I think they're all very valuable. So we are doing something closer to an internship with the technician training program we run with Stonehill and BSU. And I find it really exhilarating for the students to have gone through 3 semesters and now realize that the jobs they had in supermarkets or as security guards are turning into real careers. And so that internship is such an exciting and consequential decision for their careers. So I think they're very important. And I think the schools and employers appreciate this.
To chime in for the apprenticeships, at least in manufacturing, it's been hard for us to bite on that because it's a lot of work and it's not one size fits all. So we have to make them for us, which is fine. And I'm trying to get the amped board to communicate a little bit more with people on that and offer assistance so that we can all partner together. So it's just laid out and here's what you need to do. But on the, going through a pre-apprenticeship program, or an apprenticeship program shows a certain level of commitment that someone just coming in off the street trying to find a job is not going to have. So if I were to be approached with potential hires and there were 3 of them, one of them went to an apprenticeship program, the other 2 have not, they all, let's say they're all entry level, all have no real life experience in a manufacturing job. It's just what they did through the apprenticeship program. I'm probably going to go to the apprentice because of that commitment they made to learning the trade and wanting to really be in it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add to the apprentice front that I think Julie, all the observations were very helpful, and Julie's observation are there are kind of different levels of work-based learning, and certainly internships and co-ops and those structured approaches are part of it. In the apprentice, relative to the question about registered apprentice, what I would note is the state has done a lot of work in the last 3 years, as well as alignment at the federal level to try to make apprentice opportunities wider than they've been historically. So different job classifications in different industry. We have also started to lay the groundwork, as some other states are, relative to the question of how can associations or workforce boards or community college play a slightly different role as assisting in planning, taking some of the paperwork, which is a task, developing of the work process materials required, and how as a state can we do that more effectively. We had created, I guess 2 years ago, manufacturing hubs across the Commonwealth to start to build that knowledge about how to do apprenticeship more effectively and to be more supportive in development of the apprentice model and in supporting the implementation of the model. Because I agree that it is a challenge of understanding the nuances of it and the paperwork associated. So we are very focused on how we can expand that and how we can share those models so that each employer isn't starting from ground zero, particularly where they have similar occupations. The Commonwealth has worked to try to support employers by now having a tax credit available for companies that are using an apprentice strategy. I'd add to that something that I think Kristen hit on, which is very important, that we just started rolling out, is we really have heard from the employer base that they are interested in apprenticeships, but they really want to do apprentice for people who are hired with some level of capabilities. Our comment about pre-apprentice being. So one way that we're thinking about that is what's called the Career Tech Initiative that the governor announced last year, and we've just started to roll out, which is a much more formalized process. How can we leverage in the evening and the afternoons our investment in our high schools and our regional vocational schools with adult programs that could serve very much like pre-apprentice programs. We've launched in the first 10 up until now this year, but we really have a goal of expanding those so that as companies like Kristen are hiring, they know what they're getting, what's the skill sets, what's the capacity, and probably equally important of where are they coming from, what schools, and how frequent, because part of the Career Tech Initiative is recognizing that we need to have a flow of employees, of potential prospective employees coming out constantly, and that we as educators can't look at a June as being the only time in the year that employers need people, and trying to work more systematically on scheduling multiple cohorts during the year, scalable and consistent curriculum. So we think that that would provide a body of employees who then would be prepared to be apprentices, because that's part of, I think, part of the success long-term of building apprenticeships is a feeder system. I see that we're almost perfectly on schedule. So I'm going to thank everybody and turn it back to Haley for what she might have for observations or next steps.
Yeah, so one of the questions that did come in off of the Facebook page, because we're in Facebook Live, and this actually might be a good way to wrap this up. It was, is there a location or space that houses these connections to find these opportunities? Such as, how do I get more information or sign up? And that's kind of a great closing as to where we want to go, to try to direct the audience as to where they would go. Obviously, we would be more than happy to provide as much information to those that are in attendance today, and then anybody that would reach out. But are there any specifics that any of you, any locations or websites that you feel are really impactful that can provide a lot of this information to the audience?
So I'll take a crack at it, Haley. I think, I think we can always do a better job, but I believe that if you can go to the masstech.org, you will see some of these programs that we're talking about, Massbridge and so on and so forth. And also the other destination would be mamanufacturing.com. So we try and put all of these programs and initiatives on there. As I said, it's still, we are constantly improving that, but in the coming months, we will be announcing what we call a program, that connector system, and that will allow us to connect workers with employers, basically, and the programs that we have. So stay tuned. We'll be in the coming months, we'll be talking about that and how we're going to address that. But in the meantime, those are the few observations or few sites that you can go to find out about these programs.
Yeah, and at MassMEP, our website is massmep.org. We have a manufacturing your career link, and that is a way for our manufacturers to connect with those looking also for a career. I think, Kristen, I think you're in our manufacturing career link. I think you're in there too, right? Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, mostly. I assume. Yeah, I'm going to say yes.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you're in there too. So it's definitely out there. The information is available, but we always do follow up at the end of this. So we will be sending an email out, and we'll put in, I did attach the website that Farhad had suggested, and then to put that in the chat, but we also will include that in our follow-up email. So if anybody were to have any other questions, we'll put everything. Yeah.
I would just add to that is that they can always email us. If you can as an email address, we'll be more than happy to let people know how to get in touch with people and how to connect.
Absolutely.
These programs.
Yeah, we will be sure to include each of our panelists and hosts' contact information, and then that way you can reach out to them directly, and hopefully they'll be able to provide you with more information, and we can start bridging this gap together as a combined effort. So and that's it. We're a little over, but you are getting great accolades from everybody that attended today. So thanks to the panelists, thanks to our host, Bob. This was a great webinar, and we appreciate those that attended. So we had a great audience. So thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Well.
Thank you.